What we're going to talk about. Okay, so today is the penultimate. Yes, I've been wanting to say that all morning. The penultimate session of this course. So we'll do a wrap up next week, but this is sort of the session before the last session. And what I really want to talk about is effective team prospecting. The idea really being that we spent a good chunk of time talking about the foundational sort of structures that I'd recommend having when you're thinking about business development, when you're thinking about prospecting. We then got into medium specific calling, emailing, events, social media, etc. Brought on some cool experts in those fields, which I hope you'll take advantage of and reach out to because they really have a wealth of knowledge. And now I really want to leave you with this thought around how do I not only make myself more effective in prospecting, but make my team more effective in prospecting as well. And just for the folks on the call, does anyone either have their own team or part of a team?
Team, part of a team.
Beautiful, love it. Okay, so then we're in the right zone. Okay, first things first. Quick disclaimer. There's so much that we could talk about with regards to teams that we would not be able to fit it into 30 minutes. So I'm just going to go at a few areas that I see common missteps and common or solutions to common missteps is a better way to put it. The very first thing that I see with regards to teams is a lack of diversification around roles. It tends to be at times, and this is not meant to be accusatory, but it tends to be at times that it's like birds of a feather. People feel comfortable with, like attracts like, that kind of a thing. But really what I've seen in the most effective teams is everyone really understanding their lane and understanding what they're good at. So the analogy here would be basketball players and, not trying to turn a point guard into a power forward or anything like that. And we'll go into what that really means in specifics when we get into the personality profiles and the way that they prospect. But ultimately what I'm getting at is, understand what you're really great at, find a complement to that, and make sure that it aligns with what the team really needs. And my analogy there would be, if you're a phenomenal point guard and you have a great shooting guard, don't get another great shooting guard, right? Like look to see if you can find them. So if you got somebody who's, phenomenal at being social and being at the open house and whatever the case may be, you might need someone who plays a completely different role, who's great at getting on the phone and following up and making sure that those people have their questions answered and they feel heard and that kind of a thing, but who maybe isn't the greatest at being face-to-face the way that you might be, or vice versa. So I'll leave that there, but that's kind of the first point. Any questions there before I move on? Comments, concerns? Okay, pretty simple, but the major takeaway there would be ultimately that, we're all different. We have different strengths and weaknesses, but ultimately try to source your team for what the team's goal is, not for, I've seen too many teams go the other direction where we have this group of people, then we try to find out what each person is good at, and you may end up again with an over indexing of shooting guards or forwards or whatever you want to call it in this analogy. So I like using personality profiles. I'm not gonna, try to influence you to use one versus the other. I use the DISC assessment. Has everyone on this call taken a DISC profile before?
Yes.
You have? Okay.
Yes.
Denise, how about you?
Yes.
And Donna, you said yes too? Okay. So good. So then you'll be familiar with it. I like the DISC primarily because it's just pretty simple. And I think it gets you in the zone of what we need to get from this profile. But I like using personality profiles in the process of hiring because it gives you a better idea of how to communicate and what someone ultimately will, where their baseline will be in time. And what I mean by that is most people, when they join a new team or a role, you're dealing with an imposter for the first 30 days, right? Some people you're dealing with an imposter for only 2 days, and then the real them comes out and they're 15 minutes late to a meeting. You're like, how the hell did you manage to mess this up in the first week? But in any event, like you really want to get a sense of who these people really are down the line. And then for people that are already on your team, it's really important to have a good idea of how you need to communicate to them differently in order to make sure that, they're being communicated and what the team's goals are being presented to them, especially when you're talking about hitting certain metrics from prospecting, right? I need you to get this many listing appointments. I need you to, really just look to improve your price point. I need you to, put together this event for our clients or for prospective clients, understanding how to really represent those end results in ways that are going to excite your team members could be different depending on the team member. Is that fair? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Just really quickly, I'm gonna go through. Does everybody? And I'm doing this primarily for the folks who maybe aren't as familiar with the DISC assessment, who may be watching later. But does everybody know what their score is that's on the call here? Do you know what you are? Are you a high D, high I, high CS? If you're willing to share, I'm just curious.
So I'm a high, I think I'm a DI. It's been a while since I took it, but just
Okay.
looking at what's here and what you just kind of went over, the DI is what, but I feel like my I is the highest.
Okay.
Is that like a thing to be a high
yeah.
ID?
Yeah. I'm gonna go through them really quickly, but I'm just curious, just getting started. But yeah, it definitely could be higher I than D, but high ID, high DI, totally.
Yeah, I really should take it again. It probably won't change, but I don't remember what they all, are.
Fair. And by the way, there are going to be 2 links if anybody's interested for 2 free DISC assessments. One's through Tony Robbins. It will require that you put in your name and email, and then you'll get put onto an email distribution, which you can quickly unsubscribe. The other one does not require an email, and you can go ahead and fill that out as well. But there's great stuff in there. How about you, Donna? Do you know what you are? You're on mute. No, I just can't hear you. Maybe put it in the chat. I'm sorry, just can't hear you for some reason. And Denise, how about you? Have you taken this?
Yeah, so I came out with, I was like an IDS. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Kind of equal across the 3.
yeah.
I
Okay.
actually had to do the DISC assessment when I got hired with the team. Our team lead does it with everybody just to kind of understand how people, work and where they're coming from. But I was right on the line of the compliant and steady.
Compliant and steady. Was that you, Ann? I'm sorry, I couldn't see who that was.
Oh, Tracy, sorry.
Oh, hey, Tracy.
Hi.
And you said you're compliant and steady. Okay. So let me go ahead really quickly and just kind of, for everyone who maybe isn't as familiar, kind of go through what each of these might be, or what they are, excuse me, and why that might be relevant to, the types of hires that you make or the types of folks that you have on the team. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share a different screen here. By the way, interestingly enough, this DISC assessment was created by William Moulton Marston in the early 1900s, I believe. And he went by Charles Moulton as his author name, but he's actually famous for the invention of the systolic blood pressure system. He's also famous for creating Wonder Woman, if you can believe that. And the DISC profile, among a few other things. So I thought it was a pretty interesting cat. But okay, so really quickly, I'm going to fly through this. I'll attach this to the notes for anybody who wants to review. But you've got, first and foremostly, you've got DISC, right? So D style. It sounds like what it is, right? Driven, direct, decisive, strong-willed, self-confident. What I think is interesting about D's is, this particular slide deck goes through what they're motivated by, but also how you may want to communicate with them. So these are the people that they want to go out and get it. You want to give them this is the bottom line. These are the results. You can really just get very specific and say, hey guys, this is the goal. I don't care how you get to it, just get to it, right? And they're going to go out there and get it. If you start to mire them down with process, if you start to tell them it's got to be this way, that way, or whatnot, you may get some pushback. And again, these are generalizations, so inherently they're going to be flawed. But think through, who on your team may be the type that, if you give them the space, but you get very clear on this is the outcome, they'll figure out how to hit that outcome. Those are your D people. Next, we'll move on really quickly to your I style, right? These are your influencers. These people are enthusiastic and optimistic and persuasive, and they light up a room. And so for these people, you really want to make sure they're being recognized. You want to make sure that they're involved in the group. You want to make sure that they feel good about their relationships. You don't want to go to a high I person and say, listen, you need to start pressuring your people to do this, that, or the other thing, because they're going to value the relationship more than anything. So you want to give these people a lot to look forward to, right? You don't want to put them in a position where they feel like they're salesy. You don't want to put them in a position where they feel like, they're going to be seen differently by their peers. So this is a great person to put in an open house. This is a phenomenal person to put in charge of the next team event or whatever the case may be. This might not be the best person. And again, they could be great at this. So there's always outliers, but this may not be the best person to say, listen, you got to make sure you're making your calls every day, right? Now you could make the calls every day, but make the calls to set up a coffee meeting, make the calls to invite to the open house, to invite to the party, but don't make the calls where any of the actual value or sale or any of that sort is happening on the call, because this will not resonate with very high I people. And I see some people shaking their heads on this call, leading me to believe that they themselves are I people as well. So going down to your S's, these are your steady folk, right? This is predictable, stable. You want to have a system. You want to have, accountability. These are the people where consistency matters, right? And again, you can have somebody who is phenomenal at sales, but it's coming from, they believe in the process. They're not, out there running and gunning. They just are consistent every day. And these folks may not be pushy, but they will stick to the system. And if you as a leader can convince them that if they subscribe to the system, they will get the results they're after, then they will consistently do that. So again, motivated cooperation, sincere, loyalty, helping others, etc. And then lastly, and certainly not leastly, is, you got your high C. These people are cautious, they're analytical. These people are going to give you, if you tell them, hey, this is the script you want to follow, they're going to give you the 8 reasons why the script would be wrong, and what if this person says this and says that, and whatnot. But at the same time, these people will also not be, for lack of a better term, bullshit artists. If they don't know the answer to something, they're going to tell you they do not know the answer, and they'll find it. So there's tremendous value in having these people on your sales team as well. And when you're thinking about, your prospecting, you want to make sure that these people are really aligned with, well, at least for, let me back up. From a team leader perspective, you also understand that a lot of people that are high C are probably also going to be working with clients that are high C, and those clients will appreciate that. You need to know that, especially if you're being involved in that transaction, you're going to be coaching your team member on working within that transaction. You also need to be aware of that if you are putting together, the prospecting habits and tools for your team and creating a schedule. You want to know, hey, okay, well, if I've got somebody on my team who's a high C, there's a greater likelihood that a lot of their clients are going to be that way as well. And I want to make sure I give them, all the details, the numbers, where the sources come from, etc., rather than just telling them, hey, this is how you respond to that objection, and all will be well. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, I think the net on that, I'll stop there, but the net on that is use a personality profile assessment up front before you impart upon your team members, this is how we prospect here, right? Because you may not have to change it all that much, like I said, with making calls or the emails, but you may have to slightly maneuver the way you make the call, the intention of the call, the message in the body of the email, and ultimately, how each of your team members is going to communicate with their sphere most readily. So that's that. And then lastly, and then we're going to open it up for questions. God, we're already 20 minutes into this. Good Lord. All right. Lastly, how many of you folks have done a wheel of life before? Anybody?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe some variation.
Okay. Okay. So this
How much
is
time you spend on everything, right? That-
nope.
No.
Nope. But good guess. Great guess. This I stole from Tony Robbins, who stole it from a million other people. And this is, in my mind, one of the greatest tools that any personal development person has ever shared with me. And I'll tell you why. Okay. So this is how you use this. What you're going to do is you're going to have someone sit down in a quiet space on their own time when they don't feel pressured or whatever. Oops, sorry about that. And you're going to have them fill in on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being in, or 0 to 10 rather, 0 being in the mid or in the center of the circle, and 10 being on the outside perimeter, how they feel about their results in each of these areas, right? And then you're going to fill it in as far as the colors go. So you see 2 examples, one on the left and one on the right, and I'm just going to highlight how I would read this and how it would pertain to if I were working with my team member on his or her prospecting. So first and foremostly, what I love about this is everybody's 10 is going to be different. And so this is all just a relative scale, and this is all subjective. It's how you feel in any area. However, how you feel in one area, do we think that impacts every other area? Yes or no?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for example, if we look to the right over here, if I'm someone who has a 4 in finances, I may have hesitations around telling my client that they need to make a higher offer. I also may have problems with, hey, can you go pick up the food and wine for the open house, and we'll pay you back obviously, but can you just go grab those real quick and get set up? And so knowing what someone is dealing with in the background is really helpful when you think about, okay, how's this person going to show up every day? And also, how can I help them to get into a better place so that they can, transfer, because that's all sales is anyway, right? It's a transference of energy. How do I get them to feel good so they can share that feeling with our clients, and our clients can put in, their minds and their hearts that, like, hey, our team represents a good feeling. That's ultimately what you want. You want your clients to think like, hey, whenever Denise gives me a call or Tanya gives me a call, like, I feel better afterwards. They may not say that literally or think of it consciously, but that's what you want to lead them with, right? That you're taking them somewhere on an emotional journey to somewhere they aspire to be, right? They aspire to be in their dream home. They aspire to have their dream life. They aspire to know that their largest asset is well looked after and taken care of, that the neighborhood is going to be a neighborhood where their kids can feel safe and play, and whatever the case may be. So without getting too long-winded, what this diagram does for you is it gives you a snapshot into how they're feeling in each of these areas. Now, here's how you may want to read this, or how I choose to read this. So I look at an average for each of these scores, right? So if we were to take the one on the left, and don't crucify me on my math here, I'm going to eyeball this, but you've got some 7s, you've got 5, 6, 6, 5, 4, 5. So I think if I were to average all this out, you'd probably end up with an average baseline of a 6, right? And so if you were to have this on a pen and paper, if you can visualize this, I would draw a 6 around the entire circle. What you want, has everybody heard of the term geometric growth before? So geometric growth is kind of like if you're spinning something around, and it gets that centrifugal force, and it can just keep going faster and faster and faster because it's not losing, there's no bumps, it's not losing any of its momentum as it comes back around. It's the same idea in life. If this were a ball rolling down the hill, right? In both cases, this ball would not roll so well. And because it wouldn't roll so well, that causes pain in some area of the life. And that pain then gets redistributed around to other areas of that person's life. So what you want to do is you want to figure out, how can we help this person to get to a 6? Because that for them is their baseline. For somebody else, a baseline could be 4. Now, there's no better or worse to having a 6 baseline or a 4 baseline. But what you want to do is you want to figure out what is happening in their world that is taking them above a 6 or below a 6 in this example, right? Because that's ultimately what they're telling you. They're telling you that my baseline is 6, and in these areas, right? So for this particular on the left, in personal growth in my physical environment, I'm doing better than expected, right? But in areas such as fun or romance, I'm doing worse than I thought I should be doing, right? And so that's how you want to read this. And this is how you may want to address that, by just saying, listen, currently for my team members, you just gave yourself a 4. You can't give yourself a 4 unless you know what your 10 is. So what's your 10? And they're going to say, I have no idea what my 10 is. How could I know what my 10 is? And it's always going to change. Press them to write down what their 10 is. Give them the freedom to say that this will change over time. That's okay. But what is your 10? And then give me the reasons why you currently feel like you're a 4. And then ask them what would need to be different in order to get you to a 6. What needs to change? And the reason that this is so valuable, coming full circle, no pun intended, to your prospecting, is that the more you can help them to identify and remedy areas that are causing them pain in their lives, the better they are going to be at sales. I guarantee it. Because you will have happy, healthy, just wonderful people buzzing around. And I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but sharing great energy with your clients, and that will help you grow your business. And what I've seen go the wrong way is I've seen too many teams, and this will go into the best practices, too many teams where you're all lying to one another. There's a bunch of people who are terrified to share with their team leader where they really are in their life, or the team leader knows about it but is choosing to ignore it because it's just not convenient, and they didn't have anyone to help them. So why should you have help? Why should this person get help from you, etc.? And all I'm getting at is that you don't have to become their savior. You're still in a lot of ways their manager, their boss, their team lead, whatever the case may be. But you also can really, thank you, Donna. You also can really get a lot further, a lot faster as a team and as a team leader monetarily by helping them address these emotional wounds, because then you're going to have more productive people. So along those lines, before I get into best practices, any questions on the wheel of life?
Nope.
Cool. Love it.
No,
Anybody else? Go ahead, Denise. I'm sorry.
it's really good.
Had to happen sometime. Thank you. All right. So just quick best practice. This is not rocket surgery, as my I know it's supposed to be rocket science, but I had a rugby coach back in the day who probably thought it was supposed to be rocket surgery. He wasn't the brightest bulb, but he was good at rugby. And he used to say, it's not rocket surgery, and we would all have a laugh. So that stuck with me all these years. Anyway, this is not rocket science, but I think these are things that are great reminders. Selling is like sex. I knew that'd get your attention. Selling is like dancing. It is like sports. It is like anything else that you want to learn physically. You have to show them. You can't just tell them. So when you're trying to communicate to a team member about, this is how we make a reconnection call, this is how we are displaying a CMA, this is how we're going to talk about concierge, this is how we're going to explain our value as a team, in a social setting, you've got to show them. You have to do it first. Otherwise, see you later. Otherwise, I know we're a little over time here, so thank you guys for your clemency. But you have to show them. I've seen too many team leaders, try to direct people to do things that they're not great at, And frankly, it falls flat because it's a lot of theory. And if you're not great at it, that's okay. But have someone on your team that is, or have a colleague in the office who's great at it, who is willing to show your team how to do it if it's not your core competency. But selling is really not a telling thing. It's got to be shown. So that's number one. Number two, face the team's fears head on. I might be dramatic language, but fears are like a cancer, right? You've got to get it out early, and you have to make sure it doesn't come back. And what I mean by that is, if somebody comes in and on day one, they feel safe enough to say, like, I do not feel comfortable making calls, that is something that, in my mind, you can address really quickly. And if you take a very considerate and conscientious approach, you can break through that fear of quote unquote cold calling that people carry for years. You can break through that in a week, right? So if I said to you, look, like, you have no trouble calling other people, your friends, etc. Why? Okay, well, I'm not asking anything of them. Okay, great. So here's a list of people. Don't ask anything of them. Just give them a call. Okay, great. All right. So, well, I need something to say. Okay, well, what do you want to say? Well, this, right? If you go through all that stuff and you get people comfortable, they're going to start making calls. They're going to feel comfortable making calls, and then away you go. You just nip something in the bud in a couple of days that would otherwise debilitate the team and their prospecting for years to come. And I've seen too many, team leaders deal with this for years with people when they could have knocked it out in just a couple of days. Third, pull, don't push. What that means is, you can't give what you don't have. Be the team leader that is out there being a rainmaker, setting the pace of the prospecting, of the business development, and invite the rest of the team to follow suit. You are totally, in my mind, of every right to set a standard, to say, if you cannot effectively keep up with this standard, then I'm sorry, but this won't be the right fit for you. But you have to set the pace. You have to set the standard. I've seen too many team leaders, unfortunately, try to get others. I know it sounds like the same point I just made, but get others to do things that they themselves don't do. I've yet to see it work. So set the pace yourself. Fourthly, consistency is key. A little bit a day is where you want to be, right? Like, even if I've seen too many teams get mired in their busy work, and they set this like massive prospecting block on their calendar, and it's 4 hours long, and it ends up being an hour and a half of the team just kind of chit-chatting and catching up and doing whatever the case may be. And I think you're far better off to get them on a schedule where they do just a little bit every day, and keeping that pipeline building. And then lastly, and this, again, not rocket science, but lastly, make sure that you have, for each of your teammates, you have an annual plan of what their goals, their metrics, all the activity that leads up to those metrics, broken down into quarterly, monthly, weekly, and then daily activity. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, let them know how that activity impacts the overall team, right? Especially if they're high S, high I, right? Let them know that we're counting on you, right? This is your contribution to the team, rather than, this is just kind of your goal for your deal, and that's, we hope you hit it. Any questions on what I covered? I know I went over time here, so thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? I see typing, but I don't know if that's coming in our chat or not. Thank you too, Donna. I appreciate it. Okay, great. So you got it. So what we're going to do next is we're just going to have a wrap-up session. If you've stuck with me this whole time, I greatly appreciate it. I hope that it's been valuable to you. And again, I'm not going anywhere. So if you have questions, you can always reach out to me, Steven@ChiragShahCoaching.com. More than happy to do one-on-ones. More than happy to address any specific, business development or other concerns that you feel you may have. And again, it's been a ton of fun. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Steven. It was great.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You're going to send the slides, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.